Next, I would like to invite the member, Ms. Soumya, MLA from Bangalore, to address the event. Is she there?
I don't see her. She was there.
Yeah, she was there actually. Okay, so then let's go with, can we go with Tara?
Yeah, sure.
Please, Tara.
She was there, but I think she dropped
Yeah.
out. Okay. I'll also thank you for inviting me. I'm Tara Krishnaswamy. I'm actually a technologist by profession, but I'm also an activist, and I work on women's representation in particular, along with a group called Shakti. We're a voluntary group of volunteers. We're not an NGO. And many of the other panelists you see here, Dr. Kalpana has participated in Shakti campaigns. Dr. Carole Sparry has been a great inspiration, and actually MLA Soumya Reddy also has participated in campaigns, so I'm very happy to see that. If I could share my screen just briefly, I will keep my presentation short as well. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, so I'll speak specifically about Tamilnadu politics. One of the good things about Tamilnadu politics, if you can see the slide, is that after 50 years of sort of Dravidian politics, if you will, I've just mapped out some of the development indicators around women in Tamil Nadu. And I've specifically chosen indicators that are not just sort of, not dependent on others, but dependent sort of on the women's interests themselves. For example, the normal indicators used are maternal mortality or, enrollment of women in school, girl children in school. These are things over which women don't necessarily have control. It's entirely dependent on state. I've chosen indicators on which women have control, and the state needs to enable women's aspiration in order for them to achieve things. For example, if we look at the number of female PhDs per crore, which is sort of the third column here, compared to the other large states, compared to an India average of 578 at the bottom, you will see that it's almost 3 times. If you look at the number of women postgraduates per crore, you will again see 17,000 versus 39,000, more than twice the number. And then you look at gross enrollment ratio in higher education, which is college for young women between 18 to 23 years as a percentage of the women who graduate school. Again, you see that 48% of women, almost half the women that leave school end up in college in Tamil Nadu versus, 26 in India. Even Kerala, you can see that is lower. I don't know if I have Kerala here, but yeah, I do. Kerala is at 43. Tamil Nadu is at 48. And if you wonder what happens with SCSTs, again, the higher education for SCSTs also is whopping 41, which is, close to Kerala's number for SCSTs and, far higher than any other state. Similarly, the labor force participation ratio is about 10% points higher than the India average. Bank accounts, number of women with bank accounts is one of the highest in the country as a percentage. The amount in the bank accounts is also, 36% of women with bank accounts actually have money in the bank accounts, as opposed to, it can be far lower in many parts of the country. And High Court judges, reasonable, again, nowhere near the 50% that it needs to be, or the 33%, but, or even a third, but nevertheless, it is not it's not a really bad number. Similarly, women police officers is, 3 times as high as the nearest number in Odisha. So the reason I point this out is to say that overall, 50 years of Dravidian politics has done reasonably well by women. We still have a long way to go in terms of, getting to the critical mass of 33% or even 50%. Nevertheless, it's way higher than the rest of the country. Now, In stark contrast, I hope you can see my next slide. If you can't see the next slide, which is male and female MLAs in state assemblies, please let me know. But in stark contrast, you see that the number of female MLAs percentage in Tamil Nadu is very, very low. I've circled Tamil Nadu. It's at 5% compared to many, many other states. Even states that you normally don't think of as, you know, reasonably advanced along the human development indicators or economic indicators. For example, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, even Jammu and Kashmir, Jharkhand, you know, Madhya Pradesh, all of them, Rajasthan, have way higher percentage. Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, of course, have a way higher percentage of women than, you know, than Tamil Nadu does. And then if you look at how Tamil Nadu has done over a period of time, which is the next slide, the India average versus the Tamil Nadu average. Again, I hope you can see the next slide. It tells you that starting from 1962, Tamil Nadu has done very, very poorly. As you can tell, this is one of the 1971 was a shame. There was 0 females in assembly other than 67 and 71, which coincides with the advent of the Dravidian parties. And then if you see the largest number of MLAs again have coincided with, you know, the largest number of fielded candidates, also MLAs have coincided with the ADMK's terms. Now, if you wonder, is that because women don't win? Well, this is the win rate of male females from 1967. Before that, the Election Commission doesn't maintain data up to 2021. I think Dr. Carole Sperry also showed this data. The pink is male, okay? The pink is male. And if you see, the purple has a higher win rate many times, right? The pink, as I said, 1971 is a shameful year when there were no female representatives in the Tamil Nadu Assembly. But if you see the purple win rate, most of the time it's higher than the pink, telling you that women actually win at a higher rate than men most of the time in Tamil Nadu, which means what? Which means voters have no problem voting women, but women are not getting fielded in adequate numbers by the political parties. Again, this is deposit forfeit rates. Now, a lot more men than women run from many parties and also as independents. But so let's look at deposit forfeit rates, which is, do they even have a critical mass of voters, bare minimum of voters voting for them? Again, the pink is male. Men tend to lose deposits at a much, much higher rate, which means that even though a lot of men run, basically they don't have support, right? So it is because it is in this background that you know, we started Shakti. The thinking is that, look, from day one, there's been female franchise. And as Dharani pointed out in the introduction, women have had franchise pre-independence in India, under British India. In fact, Tamil Nadu was the first state, the Madras state at that time, to send a woman to the Madras Legislative Council, which was Dr. Muthulakshmi. With all that, Tamil Nadu is one of the lowest percentage of female MLAs. India in general has very, very poor women's representation at the higher echelons. And it's only because of reservation that in the local governments, we have 33 to 50% women. So it is in recognition of that that Shakti was started as a grassroots citizen movement, a non-partisan platform, thinking that, look, there are many, many stakeholders in this process, not only the women's reservation bill. As Dr. Carole Sperry also stressed, we can work with parties because parties field an abysmally low number of women. We can educate voters as to the importance of women in politics. And of course, women candidates get very poor exposure. And you also see a lot of trashing of women candidates. There's a lot of misogyny that comes out in the open during election campaigns. This Tamil Nadu elections wasn't very different either. From every single party, there was, you know, the speaking ill of women, if you will, female candidates and female politicians. And then, of course, there's the women's reservation bill. So Shakti has been running campaigns. It's a volunteer team. Volunteers change. This is just an example of the set of volunteers that were in a particular meeting. Shakti is pan-India, which means not our meetings aren't all face-to-face. These were just the people that were present in the room at the end. We ran a lot of campaigns towards the Lok Sabha elections in 2019 and subsequently for the Bihar Assembly elections, also for the Tamil Nadu Assembly elections. Commonly there is a lot to counter, including what gets talked about in the press, what gets in the minds of people, and especially in the minds of politicians and political parties. Notions that women are not interested in politics. Dharani mentioned it as well in his, introduction, that a lot of women are, related. They are related. They have male relatives, and that's why. Well, there are a lot of men who have male relatives and have had families in parliament and in assembly. For some reason, we tend to focus on it much more for women. So there's just a lot of excuses that get women lack winnability. I just threw data at you that shows that no, women do not lack winnability. In fact, if you look at the Lok Sabha data, every single election, women have won at a greater rate than men, every single election. So the notion that, and competence, well, Tamil Nadu is one of the states that has had long-running female chief minister, and we just saw the statistics. This is the statistics at the end of 50 years of Dravidian movement, reinforcing a lot of the good things that the two parties have done, both the DMK and the ADMK. So these results did not come without Dravidian politics. And you can see they are not there in the other states, not even in Kerala. So kudos there. But unfortunately, we've done very, very poorly with women's representation at the assembly and then at the parliament level. So Shakti, as I said, works with the entire stakeholder ecosystem, including political parties. We petition parties to give more tickets to women. We did the same with the DMK as well. Before every election, we do that. We hold various discussions about why there must be women's representation, sort of to get the press attention and the political party attention. You can see MP, Kanimuri was at this event. We have had MP Tamilachi Thangapandian as well. We have had, representatives from all parties, spokespeople, various other people in the discussions. We've also run campaigns around women's reservation bill. Every single state with the star that you see there are states in which we reached out to MPs. We joined hands with a network of organizations across India. We had a Call Your MP campaign, the first time ever in India where ordinary citizens, volunteers, part of Shakti, called every single of the 542 MPs in Parliament. And, of the 130 MPs that picked up the call, 127 across 23 parties in 21 states, including DMK MPs, of course, said yes to the women's reservation bill. What happened after that? Many of them raised it in Parliament. You can see the news right after our call campaign, the very next day, or within the week when the Parliament was in session. Many MPs, just samples of MPs who raised it in Parliament, asking for the women's reservation bill. We've also run ground campaigns. In fact, we ran it across multiple cities across the country. These are all, us getting on the street and asking for parties to give more tickets to women, Election Commission to stop accepting nominations that are 90-95% men. In fact, in the Chennai campaign, you see Dr. Kalpana Karunakaran actually addressing the crowd here. And recently, for this Tamil Nadu elections, we launched a film, 80-second film, which I'll play for you at the end. I'm almost at the end. Again, we had invited representatives of all parties and activists to launch the film, Pen and Politics, to talk about the importance. This is to get into the voters' minds for why it is important to have women's representation. We had a session actually during COVID, so we had a restricted audience. But you can see the DMK MP here and numerous activists. This was done in the Madras School of Social Work. Shakti volunteers, Advocate Jyoti, Shakti Rekha ma'am, many of the others, Shalin Lawrence, who's an activist, and you see an ADMK spokesperson, of course, Prakash Raj, the actor, politician, was also there to launch the event, launch the movie. Now, before I close with the film, I will leave you with the thought of, how many people grow up, how many people today across the country, we see far less in Tamil Nadu, but across the country, you see many people saying, I grew up without even knowing what caste is. Therefore, caste doesn't exist. Casteism is gone, casteism is old. We all know that is entirely untrue. The fact that, in fact, people with privilege don't know that caste exists doesn't mean that caste doesn't exist, right? In fact, what is very clear is, and this is what Dravidian politics has taught us, is if you're blind to, when you conduct caste blind politics, what you end up getting is domination of the privileged. That is why the data in Tamil Nadu for OBCs, for SC/STs looks much better. The same way, when your politics is gender blind, you end up with an assembly with an average of 5%. This time we have 5% female MLAs. The average from 1967 is 5% female MLAs, one of the worst in the country. When your politics is gender blind, you don't even have a single female MLA in the 16 Chennai constituencies. And when your policy is gender blind, and I'm talking nationally, we have 8% less women vaccinated today than men. So what I'm trying to say, and I think, Dr. Carole Sparry has also written a lot about it in her Gender and Development Politics book, where if you don't specifically reach out to marginalized communities, if you don't reach out to underprivileged castes, if you don't reach out to women, if you don't reach out to transgenders, you will not find representation for them. And when you don't find representation for them, wherever, educationally, socially, economically, politically, you end up with a situation like this, right? We exist, therefore we should be able to represent ourselves. Before I close, I will just play the 80-second film, if that's okay. It won't take more than 80 seconds, I promise. Okay, so there it is. I hope you can see the screen. I'm going to play the film now. You should be able to get the sound as well.
இன்னைக்கு ஒரு குடம் தண்ணி எடுக்க 9 கிலோமீட்டர் நடந்தேன். இதெல்லாம் கண்ணுக்கு எங்க தெரிய போகுது.
இன்னைக்கு என் கல்யாணத்துக்கு என் பொம்மையும் வந்திருந்தது. அது உங்க கண்ணுக்கு எப்படி தெரிய போகுது?
நான் எப்பவும் வீட்டுல தான் இருக்கேன். ஆனா வீடு தான் என் பேர்ல இருந்தது. இது எப்படி உங்க கண்ணுக்கு தெரிய போகுது?
இன்னைக்கும் எங்க ஸ்கூல்ல கழிப்பறை லீவு தான். அது உங்க கண்ணுக்கு எப்படி தெரிய போகுது?
இன்னைக்கும் சாப்பாட்டுக்கு பதிலா பெல்ட் அடி தான் கிடைச்சது. அது உங்க கண்ணுக்கு எப்படி தெரிய போகுது?
அவன் திருப்பியும் லிஃப்ட் கொடுக்க வந்து நிக்கிறான். அது எப்படி உங்க கண்ணுக்கு தெரிய போகுது?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara, for such a wonderful and insightful presentation with details. Of course, in your presentation, it's very clear that Dravidian movement and DMK has done a lot of things for women empowerment in Tamil Nadu. But still, not much women legislators have come from Tamil Nadu. You may have questions at the end. Thank you so much.